Hi, my name is Greg Suttie. This is Suttie on Soccer. I'm here with Jacques Ladouceur.
Right.
We are continuing our conversation about raising a professional athlete. That's Jacques' new book coming up. We have a unique conversation today. We're talking about building a brand. And what this does is sort of brings together all of the conversations we've had to this point. Jacques, let's talk about that, man.
Yeah, well, building a brand, again, as Greg said, is kind of a combination of a lot of things we've already talked about. We just never told you that you're actually building a brand.
Right, that's right.
But in a professional athlete's life, once you get to a point, you have a career. The career is probably going to be, 10, 15 years, if you're lucky, right?
That's right.
If you don't have any injuries and all different types of issues, or maybe if you don't lose interest in the sport, period, and just leave.
Right.
So you have that. Although when it comes to sports, people say that's a long career. But if you take that and then you look at a person's life expectancy, it's a very short career.
Yeah.
It's not very long. I mean,
Right.
people, a professional athlete will play up to maybe 35, 37.
40 if it's a good
Some
long
people
one.
are lucky, they're going to the 40s. But you have to take a look at what you have after that, right?
Right.
Another 40 years, 50 years of life. What do you do with that?
Right. So one of the thoughts that I'm having is to the parents is we're talking about a subject that these young athletes don't even have their heads wrapped around at this point.
Correct.
And for the parents to look forward into the subject of, off the field behavior, on the field behavior, interaction with other people, all of this is going to work towards building the brand as to even being seen by, say, the scouts going into being a professional.
Yep, that's very true. So the kid is not going to have any idea of what building a brand is. But what we want to do, we want to give you a lot of different tips, different tools for you to start putting inside of them right there. We talked a little bit about the difference, kind of a comparison. If you get a package delivered to you at your house.
Oh, this is great.
Right? You don't just pick up the package and say, oh my gosh, it's so beautiful on the outside. Let me just set it on the table.
What a beautifully wrapped box.
Yeah, just leave it on the table. And you never really open it, right?
Right.
So it's what's on the inside that's very valuable, right?
Right.
That's what you want, but then you just can't always look at the outside because the inside is important. And building the brand is about the inside of the player.
And that brings me to a memory I have of a kid I grew up with, because all his dad was doing was looking at the outside of that box.
Correct.
All this guy was doing was looking at what you're doing on the field,
right,
paying no attention to what the kid was doing off the field.
Correct.
And so by the time he was being looked at, he was a great athlete. But by the time he was getting looked at, nobody wanted to deal with him because his antics off the field were no good.
Right. And that's the big point, right? Because you could look at the package on the outside and say it's great, but then once you get to open it, I mean, if there's a piece of junk on the inside, you're like, wow, what just happened?
What just happened?
Right. So it is very important to build a brand because the brand will help the athlete transition eventually from that athletic career to a different career.
So now, when we're talking about building a brand, in a lot of ways, I'm sort of thinking this kind of is just their name.
Most of it is your name.
I mean, that's what the brand is going forward without even consciously going out there and, copywriting a brand. It's just your name.
It's just your name and your character and how you build it.
Absolutely.
Then what happens is that once that's built correctly, then a lot of people want to associate with that brand.
Right.
A lot of people want to associate with it. Companies want to associate with it. They want a part of it because you've created this persona, and that's important.
So this is how it ties into literally every one of the subjects that we've talked about up to this point.
Right.
All of those issues play right into what the core issue is or isn't with this particular individual.
Correct. We talked about in the beginning, we talked about respect. We talked about discipline.
Yeah.
We talked about training.
Yep.
We talked about all these little things that we talked about. That's what people are looking for. Companies want to know that an athlete performs under pressure, perform at a high level under pressure.
Right.
So they want to take that and mimic it with their product or their service and say, well, our product or our services, we perform under pressure. We perform at a high level.
Yeah. And then, of course, as you opened the conversation just now, once you've gone through that professional career,
correct,
that brand continues on.
It does. It does, because you see a lot. There's athletes like, take a look at, for example, Joe Montana. He's been on TV for, I don't know,
right,
50 years, it seems like.
Sure.
But that's what it does. It allows you to transition into a different career, something that you want to do, but something people want you to do as well.
And the interesting thing about that, I mean, all of us have ideas or thoughts. We can pull up, any number of different named athletes that have made it well through their career,
right.
and then beyond, and also those that have, self-destructed.
Correct.
And it's interesting because those that have self-destructed that we know, those are the guys that had a brand good enough and a skill good enough to get into the professional ranks, or else we wouldn't know them.
Right.
And then they self-destructed.
Correct. And that's the biggest part of it, right? Because what you want to do when you get to this point, getting to a professional sport at a high level, it's not just getting there. Number one is getting there. Number two is staying there and performing at a high level.
Absolutely.
And then number three, of course, when you're 35, 40 years old, you want to be able to transition to something else.
Fantastic.
Because you're not going to be a pro at 50.
Awesome stuff, Jacques. Thanks for joining us, and get a hold of Jacques Ladouceur at his email. Thanks, buddy.
All right, man. Thank you.
All right.
It's been great sharing with you today. This has been a passion of mine for such a long time. You can contact me in the email below and also purchase the books in the links below.